everybody, and welcome to another episode of Board Game Specialist. We're actually on episode 16, so I'm Melanie.
And I'm Carla.
Now, this week, we're going to be doing our top 9 Euro games. And I gotta say, I found this hard to put together. First of all, not that I don't like Euro games, but most of the time when we play, it's with the kids. And that tends to be the quicker and easier, faster games, because that's all we have attention span for, apparently. And then I was searching for Euro games and what considered a Euro game. Now, BGG doesn't kind of have those as a listed mechanism, per se.
Great.
And that's where G-Stone was great, because G-Stone's an app that I use, and I like to use them for searching games, because you can search by theme, you can search by mechanism. And where we're doing heavy Euros, so I was able to search for Euro games and then like difficulty level, and I went like 7, 8, 9. And then, so then it brought up a big list, and then that's how I picked. Just because I was like, I don't know, is this a Euro game? What considers a Euro game? So I wasn't sure. How did you come about your list?
Well, the definition of Euro game is probably 75% of my collection.
Yeah.
So I kind of knew what I was going for. And then we kind of said, at least 3.5 or higher, or very close to 3.5 weight scaling.
A difficulty level of 3 and higher.
Oh, okay.
Just to give me a little bit more options. Yeah.
That added too many options for me. So I did closer to 3.5. But yeah, it was a hard list for me because I love Euros, obviously.
Yeah. And it was a hard list for me just because it's not one that gets to the table often.
Right.
I like them. I enjoy them. But it's just, with the kids, it tends to be, okay, what's quick and easy?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and the lighter medium Euros get to my table more often as well.
Yeah.
These heavier ones, you need to have about at least 2 hours, if not 3, if you're teaching the game as well. So
yeah,
they don't come out as often as all my other games, but
no, for sure. And they're good though. It's very neat, intricate games, and
yeah,
I put my list together. It's all over the place in this type of game that they are. And I was like, oh yeah, that was a good game. Oh, I should play that again. So, now before we get into the list, Carla, what have you played this past week?
Well, I got to play Everdell last weekend with Ashley.
Nice.
I didn't teach it to her because she has played it once, but kind of refreshed her, and she fell back in love with the game. And then she backed it, the big collector's edition, after she left here. But
nice.
I have a funny story to tell you about that, because I have backed the collector's edition, but just the big box that'll come in the 2 new expansions, because I already have the 3 expansions and the base game.
Right.
So I thought, well, maybe I'll up my pledge and sell what I have so that it all comes at once, all together in the box, and I don't have to split up everything and figure it all out.
Right.
So I thought I'll put it on the market and see if I can sell it for the difference that I would be for upping my pledge. And I was very transparent about that, saying I'm charging this amount because I'm going to upgrade my pledge, and I'm only charging, which was $120 for the base game plus 3 expansions and an insert. Now that was worth about over $250 value.
Right.
So I put it on the market, and I'm not kidding, seconds later my phone blew up.
Oh,
and I thought, oh no. So I look who was the first one, who messaged him, and he bought it right away, sent me the money. Well, the second guy, I had kind of went through a few of them after and said, sorry, it's pending. And the second guy was very pissed. He said, that's impossible. I literally messaged you as soon as you posted that. I said, well, you and 10 other people did. Sorry, buddy, but I'm not picking favorites, but it would cause quite a stir.
Nice.
So I played that. I got Aquatica to the table. So I don't know if you've ever... Aquatica?
Oh, right, yeah.
So it's a card playing game. You still have a board, but you have a tableau in front of you. It uses kind of the same mechanic as Concordia, where you're playing a hand of cards, and then once you need those cards back, you have to play a card to draw them all back. And it's a little engine builder. It has quite a bit of difference from Concordia. You're not building out on a map. You're just building a tableau kind of in front of you and using these actions to bonus off each other. It's a really neat game. It has an underwater theme, and it's quite quick. Like, you could play that in 45 minutes, but feels like a really meaty game. I love that one. Also got Glass Road to the Table for 2 players, because I've only played that one solo. So we played that one. That's another kind of, not really a farm building, but it is a type like that. But it's a tile placement. You have a little board in front of you, and you're using a hand of cards as well to play actions. But the neat thing is, if you play a card and somebody else also has that card in their hand, because you're going to choose 5 cards each round out of a deck of, I think, 12 that you all have the same of. And if I play a card and somebody else around the table has that card, they can follow me, but then I don't get to do both actions on the card. I can only do one. And if nobody has that card, I get to do both of the actions. So I could collect some resources or build, or I can remove some forest tiles to gain wood, and there's all kinds of things. And then you have this little wheel of resources. So you don't collect like physical resources. You're just moving these resources around a wheel, depending on how many you have. And some things will increase while others will decrease. So the wheel itself is a little puzzle that you need to figure out in order to like buy and build things. You have to know that you're going to have that resource, because sometimes you might spend one and need another one that brings that to a 0. It's quite tricky, but it's fun. And another really quick one, a new Uwe Rosenberg game that is, can be played in 45 minutes as well. What about you? What have you been playing?
Well, I was a volunteer for Tabletop YYC at the Calgary Expo. So I was in the board game area. And then my friend Keith Donaldson was there. So I got to connect with him. And he had his game, Dice Born Heroes, there. And I hadn't played it yet. So he was doing, he ended up doing like 2 or 3 demos. And every time I'd be like, ooh, I'll play 2 this. So I kept bumping into these demos. So I ended up buying the game and the expansion as well. And it was such a neat game because you've got your monsters that you have all the different characters. And there's so many options for the characters, and there's like a mail inversion option of each one. So you kind of pick which one you want to play as. Then you start with 2 dice, and the dice are so neat because they're translucent, and you have like the actual number written out with like a frame around it, so they look super cool. And then so we would roll the dice, kind of assign which dice you want to do to which action your character has, and then you're battling these monsters. And when you defeat the monster, because every time you assign cards to them, and then it goes in the discard pile, and that's also your time tracker. But when you defeat a monster, you can take cards from your discard pile, and it goes underneath the deck, so that you kind of gain more time. It was neat. It was so cool. So I ended up buying that and playing that a few times. We played Liar's Dice. And the version that they had there had like the little cups, and then underneath you had the skull, and then there was like the bloom dice, and it was so cool. And it plays a little bit like Skull in a way, because everybody has the dice. You roll it, you put it down, you kind of look into it, and you're trying to guess. You kind of start bidding, saying, okay, well, I think there's 4 5s. And this is kind of assuming everybody who's got dice at the table would have 4 or more 5 available on the table. Ones count as wild, so they count into it. So maybe I'm saying that because I have 3 5 and a wild, and I have the whole 4. And then it can go around, and people that the next in line can either bid up the number, says, well, I think there's actually 4 6, kind of change the pip of the dice, or they can say, well, I think there's actually 5 5s. And so on, and you're kind of going around, and then when somebody says, yeah, well, I challenge you, I think you're wrong, and then everybody reveals and kind of shows. And if you challenge somebody and you were wrong, then you lose a dice. But if the person that was kind of the top bid was wrong and they didn't meet the requirements, then they lose a dice, and you kind of keep going until there's last player standing. And then it was funny because I posted a picture of it, kind of commented about how much I enjoyed it, and then my friend Greg's like, "Do you want it?" My friend's selling a copy, and I was like, "Yeah." So I have a copy somewhere in Lethbridge that'll be coming to me. But and then we played Happy Salmon a ton there. We had like a table set up at the entrance with the Happy Salmon game, and everybody would walk by. I was like, "Hey, want to play a quick game?" And then mostly with the kids, and that went over well every time. The people that actually said, "Okay, sure, we'll play," and then they played it, it was like, "Huh, wow, that was cool." So it was neat. And then I played Camel Up with a couple that was attending the event to show them how to play, and that was cool as well. Now with the kids at home, we played Dice Throne once, and I was the first one to lose. And then we played Impact so many times. Like, I think this is becoming Patrick's favorite thing, the Impact Battle of Elements. So where you just chuck the dice into this box, and he's kind of constantly after supper is like, "So what does he call it?" He calls it the Avatar game because, of all the elements the Avatar has to learn.
Oh, yeah, right.
So yeah, he's like, "Oh, so where's the Avatar game? Maybe we should play that." So we played Impact quite a few times now. So that was really well worth the money, honestly, from the amount of time we've played it so far. But that's all I've played this past week. Now, I do have a couple friends coming over, and I think we're going to be trying to play a little bit of a bigger game. Terra Mystica, possibly, or Orleans. Orleans, I've only played it the one time, and it was good. And Terra Mystica, I bought it in February. It was one of those make me feel better about chopping my finger off game, but I haven't played it yet, so I'm excited to try one of those tonight.
Oh, yeah. You'll like that.
Playing games today too, aren't you?
Yes. We are waiting to see if a friend is coming from Edmonton. He was supposed to be coming, but we haven't heard yet.
Nice.
But yeah, not sure what we've got planned yet today. We haven't figured it out. But a full day of games.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, well, let's get started with our top 9 heavy Euro games. Carla, what's in your number 9 position?
Before I mention my number 9, I have a couple honorable mentions. Just a couple. The first one is called Bora Bora. It's by Stefan Feld. This is one of his heavier, crunchy games. It is a big, sprawling board, very, very busy. But you have a map on the top left, which has some islands, and then you have some tracks on the right-hand side, and then some spots for tiles. And you are kind of not really building a tableau in front of you, but adding a bit to your tableau, whether you're building some buildings or using some man and woman tiles to give you abilities. You're buying jewelry with seashells that you acquire from different things. It's quite a neat game, but it's probably the heaviest one I've played of his. I am waiting for Hamburg to come, which was a remake of Brugges, and that one I think is one of his crunchier ones as well. The other two I wanted to mention that I don't have on my list is Caverna and Agricola. So those are the two farming games, or two of his big farming games by Uwe Rosenberg. And I couldn't decide between the two yet which one I like more, because they're very similar, but they have some differences as well. Agricola is the precursor farming game before Caverna, but it also has card play in that game, so that adds a lot of different elements to the game. Whereas Caverna, you are farming, but you are dwarves that are farming, and you have like one side of your board is a farm and the other side is caves. So that's kind of where you're building rooms or maybe like ruby mines or things like that. On the left side, you're farming animals and growing crops. They're both really good, but I have just only played Agricola a couple times, so I don't know which is better, and I'm not sure where I would put them on my list. So those are my honorable mentions, but ironically, my number 9 is also an Uwe Rosenberg game, and this is A Feast for Odin. So this was made in 2016, And you play as Viking chieftains trying to expand your empire. Now, this is a worker placement game, also a polyomino game, but the worker placement spots on that board, I didn't actually look at the number, but it feels like there's about 50 of them because it's such a huge board that you can place different things. So you can't really complain about getting blocked out because, I mean, you can get blocked out of an area because only one person can go there, but there's so many different things you can do. You can like go whaling, you can go hunting, you can go plundering for treasures, you can go a farming route and get animals and then have them breed and then make milk and wool for you. There's all kinds of things. But the reason you're doing all this stuff is you're trying to acquire these tiles, which are other animals, food, treasures, hides, all kinds of things to put on your player board. And these are all little polyomino tiles. And you're trying to fill up your board because that will give you income and reduce your negative points on your board. But you also have to put them on your board so that you can surround little bonuses. So you can't just place them and completely cover them like, say, like patchwork or something. You have to like strategically put them around things. So that's the puzzle of the game. Like it's very puzzly, not just acquiring things and figuring out how to acquire things, but covering up certain areas so that you can gain these bonuses every income. You also have to feed your people, and you're using the polyomino tiles to fill up this little strip on the top. And it gets bigger each round because you will take off a person each round and make that feast table even bigger. So you have to have more food or things to fill up that feast board. Because if you don't fill it up and you haven't fed your people, you will get some like negative points that will really hurt you at the end of the game. It's a very sprawling, thinky game, but takes up your whole table. Even if you're playing solo, you still set every single thing up. It's a big setup, but I really love it. That's my number 9, A Feast for Odin.
Wonderful. I don't think I've played that one yet, but it does look good. Because that's the game that when he was creating it, that's where he got the idea for patchwork and creative patchwork from creating that one.
Yeah. And his other little line of polyomino games too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So my number 9 is the lowest in my complexity for the game complexity, and that's Power Grid Factory Manager. It was published in 2009. It's a 3 out of 5 for difficulty, and it's created by Friedman Freeze and published by Rio Grande Game. Now, Power Grid was like my number 11 on my list. But I like this one a little bit better. Now, I don't know if you've ever played this one, the Power Grid Factory Manager version.
That's different than just Power Grid?
Mm-hmm. It's a whole different game. It plays very different as well. So in Power Grid, you're acquiring these different power plants, basically, and you're supplying electricity on this map. In Power Grid Factory Manager, is you have a factory and you're kind of acquiring different workers or different machine to kind of run your factory, and you're keeping track of how much electricity everything is using, but you're not supplying, you're utilizing here. So you would kind of have stuff that's a little bit more energy efficient, so that's good, so it uses less electricity. But you'll have stuff that uses a little bit more electricity, but it actually produces more goods. So then you increase your production that way, but it costs you more electricity. You'll have some machine that will replace your workers so you can do more production with less workers. Because it's a worker placement as well, because you have these meeples for all your workers that you have available. You can hire more. But when you're bidding on the different things you want to bring into you're utilizing your workers in your bidding thing, so you might not have as many workers to activate everything you have on there. So having the automated stuff that doesn't require workers is beneficial in that way. And you're building this factory, so you have like your own grid and you're adding these tiles to it, building up your factory, trying to be as efficient electricity-wise and employee-wise and production-wise, and it's really neat, and it's so different from the regular Power Grid, but it's the same artwork, it's the same icons, like it's the same theme in a way. You just have different goals that you're playing with, and then the gameplay is very different. But I really enjoy that one. So that's number 9, Power Grid Factory Manager.
Nice. And what did you say the weight level was on that one?
It's a 3 out of 5.
A 3. Oh, I thought that would be a little more.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, like, I guess it's like it's all in the bidding and trying to get the tiles that you want, and it's interesting, but it's not a complex or difficult one really honestly, I'm looking at all of these ones, and then they're higher complexity, but I was like, well, it wasn't too hard to learn. So it has some intricacies to it, but it's a neat one.
Yeah, nice. All right. Before I say my number 8, I didn't say the weight of A Feast for Odin was 3.85. So I think that's my heaviest one on the list. I'm pretty sure. Oh, no, I have one a little bit heavier, which doesn't feel as heavy as this one. But okay, my number 8 is Teotihacan, made in 2018 by Daniele Tassini. This one's a 3.77. I like how they add the 7.7. Like, how's that different from a 7.5? Not sure.
Yeah.
So this one you were playing is a descendant of a noble family, and you're kind of in the Mosaic age, kind of. So it's very like back in the pyramids, you're building different type of pyramids. This one big one on the middle of the board, and then around the board, you're going in a rondelle with your dice. Your dice are your workers. So they start out as ones, I believe, and each time you do an action, they will ramp up. So if you only use 1 dice per action, but as soon as you move it at the end of your turn, it'll go up to a 2, and so on and so on. And what you're doing is, like I said, you're building up the pyramid, you're moving up some temple tracks that'll give you resources or points. You're moving up the Avenue of the Dead as you're building these little wooden houses for points. You're improving your technology, which gives you abilities throughout the game. It's a beautiful board, like just absolutely beautiful. And it seems like it's complicated when you look at the board. Like if you have never been a gamer and you looked at this board, you think, no, not going to play this game. It looks very complicated, but it's actually not. You're literally moving 1 dice per turn, and you are either collecting resources or building something, or you're locking your worker in a spot that will give you kind of more of a resource or more of a bonus. And then the thing you have to do is pay with cocoa beans. That's kind of the resource like money in this game. It's with cocoa beans. That's how you pay your workers as well. But when you move on to a spot, depending however many other colors are there, because each person has 1 color of dice, that's how much cocoa you have to pay. So you may go to a spot and there's a whole bunch of different colors, and you might think, okay, well, I don't want to pay all that cocoa, so I'll just collect cocoa this turn. So that way you would get to collect that many cocoa plus 1, which you'll need as you go along at the round. And it turns out depending on players, there's so many rounds, but at the end of each round, you pay for your workers. And if you have happened to flip your dice to a 6, well, then they descend and become a 1 again eventually. And they start at the beginning, and then you get a cool little bonus before they ascend. So you kind of at the end of the round don't want to have high numbered workers because they cost more cocoa. You'd want to have them descend and put back to 1. So it's kind of a tricky puzzle that way as well, but it's really fun. I love that one. I've blinged that one out as much as I possibly can. That's Teotihacan by Daniele Tassini, my number 8.
That one does look cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
The first Malcon I did, it got played at in the basement. Everybody's, hey, we got this game, we're going to play it. And it was fairly new at the time. And a bunch of people went out. But so that's as close as I got to playing it.
Oh, yeah. No, it's really good.
It does look good. Now, my number 8 is Brass Birmingham. It was published in 2018. It's a 3.9 out of 5 for difficulty. It's created by Gavin Brown, Matt Tolman, and Martin Wallace, and it's a Roxley game. This is actually a re-implementation of Martin Wallace's original Brass game, and it kind of redid it. There's Brass Birmingham and Brass Lancashire, and then I've played both. And this copy actually was gifted to me from Roxley. And it's beautiful. It has like the iron clays in there. So it's a gorgeous game, but it's this big map, and you're playing in the, what is it, like the Industrial Revolution era.
Yeah.
And it plays in different stages, like in 2 stage. And the first one, you're kind of going through, I think it's the canal, and then the second stage, you're going with the train tracks. So depending on what you've built in the first era, and if you've upgraded it enough, it'll kind of stick around for the second one, but some of the stuff will go away. And you have all these cards, and the cards kind of will play in multiple different ways. So the card will have like the location of where you can build. It also has cards that have the different things that you can build, because you can be doing, I guess, building industrial or industries or manufacturers for different goods. But it looks cool. The board is double-sided, but it's just whether you want to have the darker version or the lighter version. It's the same otherwise. I've played this one a few times, and this one has like the little beer barrels that you can kind of put, so you have like the resources, and you're moving the resources around. And it has the thing where like there's so much available, and if you kind of use up what you go on the board and have to use that up, and then it becomes scarce as to what you have and what you need to be able to kind of keep going. So I would say this is an area control, and you're moving resources around and creating these paths, and then the second path. But it's a very interesting one. It looks cool. The iron clays are so satisfying with the big clunky bits. So that's my number 8, Brass Birmingham. Yeah,
that's a unique one, because as much as it is area control, there's still some positive player interaction in it. Yeah. You know, where you can, sometimes you will have to use other people's coal or iron if it's on the board, and that helps them, but it also helps you, right? So there's times where, you want to build knowing that people are going to use that stuff, and then that will flip their tile right away, and they'll get, points or income they get, I think. I always get confused. But yeah, that's really neat. I know I used to hate this game. The first time I played it, I couldn't stand it because I just did terrible and I didn't really understand it fully. Then I played it again and it was like, oh, okay. And then a couple times later I played, and I was playing with 3 other people, and one of the ladies was very frustrated with it. So I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to play to help her, because I'm not going to win this game. I never do. I'll just play to help her. So I kind of, put things around her that she could use or benefit her. And by me doing that, she used my things and I ended up winning and it wasn't my intention, because I just thought, I just don't want her to have a really bad experience like I did. So, but by me doing that, it was so funny because she kept using my things and it helped me quite a bit. Yeah, it was hilarious. The other 2 were like, what? How'd this happen? You weren't even trying to win. But yeah, that's awesome. So that's your number 8?
My number 8.
All right. My number 7 is Maracaibo, made in 2019 by Alexander Pfister. This one was a toss-up between Great Western Trail and Maracaibo. I love both of them, but I think this theme wins for me. You're traveling around the Caribbean, trying to conquer nations, you explore lands, you'll drop off some assistants that each time you go around, you can go to these assistants and they'll give you more actions or some really cool things that you can do. The other thing in this game is I love the card play. They're multi-use cards, so you can use them to deliver goods, or you can use them to complete quests if they have different icons on them, or you can also use these cards to build in front of you, whether they be assistants or like monuments or buildings or just different ships and things that will also give you income and other benefits along the way. It's a really fun one, and we actually just recently played this with the new expansion, a cooperative scenario. And unfortunately, we didn't win because we did miss one rule that the AI, every time it goes around, if it ends the round, it would gain 15 points each round, which we didn't calculate into our game. So we probably would have ended each round a little bit in order for them to not collect that 15 points. But it was really interesting because in that one, instead of conquering the lands, you are trying to help all of the nations and you're removing the cubes instead of adding the cubes to conquer. It was quite interesting, but I love that one. It's a beautiful game as well. I love Pfister games. That's probably one of his heavier ones. That one was a 3.89. So yeah, I think that one's my heaviest that I have on the list. That's Maracaibo, number 7.
Nice. I have to play that one. I haven't played that one.
Yeah, you have to.
Oh, it's right there behind you.
Yes, you can see it.
So my number 7 is Sid Meier's Civilization, the board game. It was published in 2010. It has a complexity of 3.89 out of 5. It was created by Kevin Wilson, and it's a fantasy flight game. And I have something with Civilization game. I don't know. I buy them as soon as I come across a Civilization game. I buy it.
Oh yeah.
And then I don't play them, like just because the Civ games tend to be more complex game and lengthier games. So it's not games that gets played tons and tons. But I'll come across another one's like, ooh yeah, so I get it. So I think like Through the Ages, A New Story of Civilization was my number 10. So it didn't quite.
Oh yeah.
I played this one and really like it. And what's neat, so I bought this one at FallCon, secondhand. And then I got home and I opened it, and you have all these different characters, because you play as a different civilization, so you can kind of go all the civilization that's available to you. And all of them have this card, and there's this dial that kind of keeps track that you can kind of turn around, like into the, it looks so cool. And you kind of move the dial as you progress in the game. Each civilization has like a different ability, and you have this huge map that you put, like, and you conquest the land as well, right? And so I played this one. I actually played this one solo, but I played it as a 4-player game, and I'm just hopping from spot to spot on the table the first time I played it. Just to kind of
Did you actually move around the table?
I did.
Get up, sit over here.
I'm Caesar now. Okay, let's do it here. So I won.
Oh, good.
But it was so neat, and I was so impressed with the setup of it. And then I think the copy I had an expansion in there, because it's barely fits. Like it's.
Oh yeah.
And I was kind of looking at what the base game had, and I think there's extra components in there. But that's the benefit of buying secondhand. Sometimes,
yeah.
Like all this extra stuff
that
you don't know about. But it was so cool with the map, and then the spreading, and then like the different things you would kind of decide of what you would upgrade and evolve, and it was so much fun. And that's my number 7, Sid Meier's Civilization, the board game.
Nice. Have you played Nations?
No, I haven't.
No, I haven't played Nations, but I have Nation, the dice game. So it's a quicker version. I think you would really like it. We're going to have to try. It's really neat. Yeah, it's a fast play. So that was your number 7. My number 6 is La Granja by Michael Keller and Andreas Odendal. And he's hyphenated as Odie. So I think that's what he likes to be called. But this is a farming game. You are running a farm and shipping your crops and animals to get points. There's also a bit of area control in this as well, because you can ship them off to this market, and then you're going to place one of your little tokens on a spot in I'm not sure if you're placing it on the market, but in this little central thing, and you can actually knock people off. So if you have a certain number of deliveries, you can put it in a higher spot, and then you can knock off lower ones around you. That's just a smaller part of the game. But it's really neat because they have multi-use cards, which have 4 uses of them. There's a top, bottom, right, and left. And on the top, those you would stick on the top of your board and you'd kind of slide it down. And those will the things... Those will be the things that you will deliver eventually once you acquire them. If you stick it on the bottom of your board and use that ability, it's like a player power and gives you a little cheat throughout the game. Now, on the right side of the card, that you would stick that on the right side of your board and slide it under, and that would upgrade things. So you could either have more cards that you would get each round, you could have more income, it could give you another donkey, which will give you more deliveries, or a pig. And the pigs can breed if you have enough of them in your little barn. On the left-hand side, you have your crops. So you either have wheat, olives, and grapes, and then they can grow as well, and then you can turn them into like wine and oil and whatnot. Now, these are all different things that can work together and that you would deliver. It's quite a neat and interesting game, and I have sold mine, but that was because I ordered the big new Grandio Collector's Edition, which will be coming hopefully at the end of the year. It's beautiful. And the new edition has all kinds of scenarios that are done by all different designers. Like I think Stefan Feld even did one of the little modules in it. So I'm quite excited to get the new one of that. That's my number 6, La Granja. And that one was weighted at 3.56.
Perfect. So my number 6 is Underwater Cities. It was published in 2018. It's a Vladimir Suchy game, and it's published by Rio Grande Games. And it has a difficulty rating of 3.6 out of 5. I've played this one at, I think it was Malcon or Fall Camp. So it was like a big game weekend event that I had done at my house. Mm-hmm. And we played this one, and this one took a long time to play. We were 4 players playing. And it does say like 30 to 45 minutes per player. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot going on with it because you have the cards that you have and kind of placing your cards to activate the different action. And there's all these different places around the board, like with the different colors and different things that you can do to kind of activate the action and then the resources that you're collecting. And you're building this underwater city. I guess the theme is the world is overpopulated, and now you're trying to develop underwater cities to kind of, but it looks super cool because everybody has their own little board, and you get these little white and red domes that
those
you
are
put
neat
on there, and you build these like these corridors, I guess, that kind of connects everything, and then you're kind of building out from this, and it was neat. And then there was a lot going on with this one, so I can kind of see where the complexity level with this one, because there was like so much to consider with the cards. And then I remember we'd be like looking and it'd be like, okay, I'm going to be doing this action. And I'd be like, oh, no, why did you do that? Then like the next person had to rethink the whole plan or whatever. So there was a lot of that going on where you kind of do because as you play and everybody takes like what is available slowly disappearing, right? So it becomes a little bit tighter towards like through the rounds, and then but then it kind of resets it. But it was neat, and then just the look of it. This is a good looking game with the domes and the things. So it was really neat. But yeah, it took a long. I think, it was well over 3 hours, I think. And then just the AP, like analysis can definitely happen with this, just because there's so much to consider. That if you get somebody that really kind of tries to go for the optimal move, it really slowed down the game. So I would do my turn and then go make the bed, or do my turn and the chili.
Get all your errands done, or your chores.
But it was a neat game. It looked cool, and that's my number 6, Underwater Cities.
That's a good one. This one gets compared a lot to Terraforming Mars. But
Okay.
I enjoy this one more, Underwater Cities.
Yeah, like it doesn't
Yeah.
play, like the play doesn't feel like Terraforming Mars, but I can see the theme does.
The card play maybe, because
Like
there's
the
not really
card
area
play,
control.
sweating, but yeah, I could see similarities, I suppose, but
Yeah.
it just has a different feel.
Yeah, I like it. It's neat. I don't own it, but I've played it a couple times. I really like it.
Yeah, I don't own it either, but it'd be one that if I come across, I'd be like, sure, that's what you can come home with me.
Yeah, you don't see that one on the used market. At least I haven't seen it.
That's a good sign. That's a sign.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, good one. All right, my number 5 is Paladins of the West Kingdom. This is made in 2019 by Shem Phillips and S.J. McDonald. This is a worker placement game. Now you have this player board in front of you, and you are trying to gather workers and defend enemies. You get a few paladins to start, and you choose which one you're going to use each round. Or you get quite a few, but you're going to grab 3 cards off this deck. You're going to choose one to use, and then one you'll put at the bottom of your deck, and one you'll put at the top. So he will give you some icons that you can use to do certain things for the game. But it's really neat because you have all these little buildings on your board that you kind of want to remove because they'll give you more bonuses, and you want to build up your wall to protect your village or whatnot. And you also want to move some of the buildings over to your actions on the right, because then you don't need to use as many workers, because you have to place all these different colors, types of workers in order to do actions. And the more buildings you have there that have filled in those workers, the less people that you need. You also can complete some objectives and endgame things. It's quite a interesting game. I've never seen anything like it. I played this for the first time on the Dice Tower cruise we were taught, and we were just blown away. It's awesome. I do love that West Kingdom series, but I think this one is my favorite of the 3. Have you played this one?
Which one is it again?
Paladins of the West Kingdom?
No.
No.
I played the other ones.
Oh, have you? Like Viscounts and
not
Architects?
Paladin one.
Yeah. No, this one's really neat. You also are like hunting for provisions, because you have to pay provisions and money to do certain actions. It's quite neat. You have different places on your board where you're going to add, convert people, or you're going to conquer things, and they all give you different points, and it's just a really fun game. I love this one. Paladins of the West Kingdom. That's my number 5.
Is that like the third one of the?
That's the second. The third
that's
is
the
Viscounts. Yeah. Viscounts is
so
the
I did play
rondel.
this one once.
Yeah.
The one thing I noticed with this one is the board is such a long, narrow board.
Yeah, it
We were
is.
playing it at a round table, and it was really
Yeah,
awesome.
that's tricky. It's an awesome 2-player game because you just stick it right in front
Right.
of you, and then
Yeah, okay, so I did play this one. I was thinking it was the third one, but okay. My number 5 is Heaven and Ale. It was published in 2017. It has a difficulty level of 3.23 out of 5. It's a Michael Keevling and Andrea Schmidt game, and it's published by the Agricola. And this one is an interesting game. So you have your own board, and we're monks, and we're collecting all these resources to make ale. And the scoring mechanism is really interesting, but the action mechanism is really interesting. This combines a lot of really kind of unique stuff.
it is very unique.
Yeah, so you start with the board in the middle where you take your action, and you take your meeple, and you kind of move to the closest, the action coming up. So there's a bunch of different locations, and you can kind of go to whichever one you want, the next one that you want to do. And you can be like, okay, I'm going to go here and collect this, or, but whoever is in the last position is the next one to play. So if you go way far ahead, you can't go backwards, because you kind of skip a bunch of potential actions that you can do. And then they'll be doing all these actions until they catch up, and then before you get to go again if you go too far ahead. So you kind of want to keep it fairly tight, but you're trying to also get to the actions you want to save for yourself. And there'll be different scoring abilities around the board as well. So you kind of do that till you go all the way around the board. and you'll be collecting different things. And then you have these tiles that you'll be putting on your player board. And your player board is divided between like the light green area and then the dark green area. And you'll be playing these around these villages. And when a village is surrounded, then depending on the total tally score of what's around it, because you have like, geez, I don't remember what the resources are, but you have the resource tiles and then the number on it, and you put those around these villages. And so if the village has like a really low score, then it'll activate less of the things that's around the village, because you get to activate the things around the village, but you get to decide which one you would activate. Now, if you have a higher score, you can activate more of the tile around the villages. And it's depending on which side you're on, whether it's going to give you money or whether it's going to kind of increase and move you up in your resource thing. And then you have all these different markers where you're scoring how far you've evolved in each of the resources you're collecting. But then at the end of the game, what happens is you kind of multiply your highest score with your lowest score. So if you didn't move everything ahead and one got kind of far behind, well, your score is going to be fairly low because you're not going to multiply by as much. Well, if you move kind of everything along, so you've kind of haven't neglected any aspect, then you're going to end up doing a little bit better score-wise. And it's just been a really neat, interesting one. And I like, honestly, I can't think of a game that combines all of those elements quite like this one does.
Yeah, this is very unique. That's for sure.
Yeah, so I played this one the first time. It was at FallCon. The first FallCon I went to, I had signed up to play it. I think I ended up winning the game.
Oh, nice.
And it's kind of like, I don't know what I did. But I bought this game, I think it was at that time, so I have it and kind of played it a few times. It is just, it really, it just has like all the different combination of what it combines, all the mechanism it combines is makes it such a neat game. And that's my number 5.
That's a neat one. I think I've only played this once, maybe twice, but that's another one I've been like waiting to come on the used market, which you don't see very often. I'd love to try it again, but I love the little rondelle that you only go around once per round, and you can go as far as you want. But if you go too far, then the other people behind you can just grab up all the other stuff.
Exactly.
So do I go ahead and grab that really good tile, or do I just kind of plug along and hopefully it's still there when I come up to it? The decisions are very interesting. And the tile play is so neat too. Yeah. Good one. That was your number 5?
That's right. My
number 4 is Obsession by Dan Halligan, made in 2018. Now, this one is a 3.53, but only bumped up from the expansion, the upstairs, downstairs expansion. Before that, it was a little bit under the 3.5. But this one, you are basically playing Downton Abbey. I don't know if you've ever seen Downton Abbey. There's a new one out.
I've heard of it. It wasn't a series I followed.
Yeah, it's hilarious. I love that show.
I'm a Prejudice girl, I guess.
Yeah, you would like it then. So you were playing as a family in those times where you're trying to build up your reputation, because your reputation is really bad to start. So you have all these different kind of servants. You have butlers, you have ladies' maids, footmen, valets, I guess they're called. I always thought they were a valet, but they're called valets. And you have cooks and a housekeeper. And you're trying to build up your reputation, and you're trying to win the favor of the Fairchilds. So at the end of each round, one person will win the favor, and they will get to choose either the female or the male Fairchild and put them in their deck. So it's a bit of a deck builder and a bit of a worker placement. So you have this, you start with a family of cards. I think it's like 5 or 6. And everyone has a certain family, and you have one ability too, like a special ability. And on your turn, you also have a little set of tiles in front of you that you start with. And these tiles are either like a service tile, a sporting tile, an estate, essential, and I can't remember what the fifth one is. But on your turn, you will take one of those tiles and you'll place it at the top of your board, and you will do that action. So you may be putting on a cricket match and you need so many people to perform this. So you look in your hand and you might need like 3 gentlemen, or you can have any gentry, you can just pick and choose, and you'll play these cards down. Now on these cards, some of them will require servants. Like if it's a lady, she may require a lady's maid to be played, or if it's a gentleman, he might need a valet or a footman. And you have these little meeples. You start with, I think, 5 or 6, and you can hire more eventually, but you have to have these on the cards to play them. So you will put them on your cards, and then you will have your cricket match, and this will either gain you some reputation or money. It could give you more guests, which will be cards that you add to your deck that will also help you. And so then those cards will go in the discard, and the tile will go back, and you will flip it because you've already played it. And the flip side always has more points on it. Then you can buy more tiles. And the reason you want to buy more tiles is you want to build up your tableau so you have more options, but you also want to have the most type of a tile each round that is the favored one. Now you can play blindly where you know what color this is, or you can play at the end of the round, you just flip this card and whoever has the most gets the favor of the fair child. It's such a thematic game, and you find yourself talking like they do, and it's just so funny, but the mechanics are awesome. And once you've used those little meeples, like the workers, they go in an exhausted part of your board, so you can't use them next round. So at the beginning of next round, they will go into the middle where they're kind of on a break. So you only have what is left in the ready part of your board to use again. So you have to kind of figure out, okay, well, I'm going to need these next round, so I can't use the lady's maid. Or you can take a turn to hire more, but that takes up a whole turn, and there is limited turns throughout the game. So it's really interesting. I really love this game. It's a beautiful production. This designer, this is his first game, and he has put in his heart and soul into this game, and he keeps continually trying to improve it. Like he'll put out videos of, different solo modes, or even if people are, complaining about some little thing, because, people like to complain about everything possible, he will try and improve it. No matter what they whine about, he's on it and trying to make things perfect. I would look forward to what this guy put out next, because he really puts his whole life into this game, but it's a really good one. Obsession, that's my number 4.
That one does intrigue me, and it's one that I'd love to try to play, just because I love that era, like the story, and then that, so that's cool. Like I said, I'm a fan of Jane Austen and those novels.
Yeah,
and
you like it.
I have a few, like I have Legacy Testament.
I have that one too.
I have
That's
that.
funny too.
That one's a table hog, but it's kind of the same thing, right? Where you're building your family, trying to build prestige. So, and I also have Marrying Mr. Darcy.
Oh yes, I need to try that one.
So I like that era, and then kind of that stuff just appealed to me. So that one, and it's been a game that's been talked about a lot. It's definitely been very well received.
Yeah, and it was kind of a slow burn, because when it came out in 2018, you didn't hear too much about it. Yeah. And then I think it was 2 years ago, he came out with the expansion and kickstarted that, and then it kind of blew up because people were loving the base game, and they were, talking about it more. And you could not find this after this Kickstarter came out. People were searching everywhere. And then he released more copies, and it's really good. I'll have to bring it to Malcon.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to try that one. That was your number 4.
Yes.
So my number 4 is Keyflower. It's published in 2012. It has a complexity of 3.34 out of 5. It is created by Sebastian Bleasdale and Richard Breeze, and it's an R&D games. And this is one that I just really enjoy. And then it plays over 3 seasons. So you start with spring, summer, autumn, winter. And then at the end of the winter season, that's it, and you score. And what's so interesting is each round, new tiles comes up, and they go into the middle of the table. And the way that it's designed is because it's an octagon-shaped tile, and the side that is facing where you're sitting is where you're going to put your meeples to bid, and that's how you kind of keep track. So this side, like the one facing me, that's where I'm going to put my meeples, and then the other player would kind of go across, and they put their meeple on the side that's facing them. And if I put, you get different colored meeples. So there's yellow, red, and blue meeples. There's green meeples that's available afterwards if you have something that will kind of give you access to those. But they're going to be a lot more rare to get to. So if I put, and then you have these little shields that kind of hide what you have, and they're printed to look like a house. On the outside, you have like the outside of the house. On the inside, you have your walls and the little stuff like the decoration. So it's really thematic looking as well. And this is where you keep your meeples, so nobody can really see what you have for meeple to start with. And then you can place your meeple to bid on a tile that you want to acquire. So I was like, okay, well, I want to have that tile because that's going to give me access to be able to create this resource or whatever. So I put my meeple there. And if I put a blue meeple, let's say, then anybody who wants to outbid me is going to have to put blue meeple as well, because this tile has been assigned the color blue now. Now, if somebody is like, well, I want to do that action and don't really have, kind of want to get in this bidding war, they can go ahead and put the meeple onto the tile and just activate the action before the tile's been acquired, and then activate the action. Now, to get the benefit of doing the action, whoever wins the tile gets the benefit of that meeple that's on top of the tile is going to come back to them and get added to their meeples for the next round. And then if you get outbid, then you take that meeple back and you can reassign it somewhere else to bid on a different tile. And you do this over the 4 different rounds, and when you win these tiles, you add them to your little village that you're building. And then in the next round, you can bid on these other tiles. You can activate the tiles and put your meeple on top of them, or you can activate the tiles on your own village, and those meeple will come back to you. So there's benefit of doing that, but you can actually activate the tiles on other people's villages as well. So depending, like, some people get really frustrated with this game because you built this village because you have all these things that you want to acquire, and you can upgrade these tiles so they're going to be worth more points as you go. But say, okay, well, I'm going to do this action so then I can do that, and then this is all in your village, and then somebody comes along and activates your action before you could. Now, you can still activate the action, but you're going to have to do it with 2 meeples instead of 1. And it's going to cost you more, and it's like, oh, so even though this tile is in your village, it's not your own tile to use. Everybody has access to it still. But it's so interesting with the bidding on the tiles, the bringing the tiles in, and building your village, because what's in your village is what you're going to score, so you kind of do want to bring stuff in and upgrade these. And then you have to move the goods from, like, this one will create, I don't know, like coal, but then you got to move the coal because this one needs 2 coal in order to upgrade, but you got to move the coal over, so you got to go on a tile that kind of allows you to cart the coal over 2 spaces or whatever it is. So it's such an interesting game. I really like it. It can play long, and it's a game that's going to create a lot of analysis paralysis because there's just so much to look at. And then not only that, but then you're waiting for them to take their turn, you're waiting for them to take their turn, and you're waiting, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, they had taken their turn, you just missed it, it's actually your own turn. That happens a lot in this game, but I love it. It's such a neat game, and there's a whole key series. This is the only one I've ever played, and now I really want to get the other ones, the Keeper, the Cathedral, and all the other ones to try. So, but that's my number 4, Keyflower.
Nice. This is another one I got to put on the Melcon list. I got to try because I've been interested in that series too. But I know if I try one, I'm gonna want to try all of them. It's like eating chips. Can't eat one or I'm going to eat the whole
Right,
thing.
exactly.
All right. So my number 3 is Fields of Arle. It's a 2014 game by Uwe Rosenberg. This is his second game on my list today. This one is a 3.87, and this is another farming game. It's a 2-player game, 3 players if you have the expansion, which I don't. If anybody has the Tea and Trade expansion out there, hit me up because I would very much like to find that one. What you're doing on this one is you are building a farm. Now you have this huge player board in front of you, and between you is the worker placement action board, which is quite a few actions as well. So you have, I think it's 5 workers on each round, which there are, I think there's 7 or 8 rounds. I'm confused about the numbers, but you will be placing these on the summer side. So there's a left and a right side of the main board. And on the summer side, there's certain actions. There's quite a few actions. You can, at one time per round, one player could place one of their workers on the winter side, but that will just allow the other player to go first next round. So what you're doing is you are acquiring animals so that you can breed them later. You're acquiring resources, and you have these tools in the middle of the board that you have a certain amount of. So you put your little pip thing on, say, at the beginning, and you can improve these tools, which will give you more multiply things if for your worker placement spots. So if you improve, say, like your, let's say, what is it? Your wood, your axe. If you improve your axe, you can cut more wood. And there's all these different tools that will help you do that. And they'll also give you more points at the end of the game, the more improvement that you do. So you're going to gain those things. You're going to gain hides. You're going to maybe slaughter some animals, unfortunately, for hides and food. And then you're going to also ship these things. And the mechanism of the shipping is so cool because you have these little tiles that just sit on your player board. And until you ship them, they have like certain requirements on them. You'll place them on your little cart because you also have to acquire vehicles in order to ship things. And they have to fit on the cart, the things that you're going to ship. And then at the end of the round, you will flip them and you'll place them on your board in this line. And these are like little travel icons and you will line them up. So the more you ship and the bigger things that you ship, the more points you're going to acquire on the left-hand side of your board. It's just so neat. You can also upgrade things. You can take them into town, like say, take some wood into town and then upgrade it into like lumber, or you can turn clay into bricks, and you can turn hides into like a fur coat. And it's just really neat, the mechanic of it all. But it's such a neat game. This is my favorite farming game of Uwe Rosenberg's. That's Fields of Arle, my number 3.
That one is cool. I played it once with Michael, so I don't own it.
Right.
It'd be one that if I come across, definitely I think I would have it, or I would pick it up. But it was neat, yeah, with like the 2 seasons. So you do the summer actions, you do the winter actions, the building up. Like there's a lot going on in this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but it's a really cool one.
Yeah, because you're also building crops and you have to move up your dikes so that you don't flood things. And then once you move your dikes up, then you have more room to build more crops or have some more animals. And you can place the animals. It's not like in his other games where they have to be in barns or in pastures. You can place like a cow on a dike, or you can place them in different places, but they do need to be in stables if you want to breed them. But it's just kind of neat. You kind of have them all over your board. I think one might even be able to be like on a crop. Like it's just so funny where you look at your board at the end of the game and you've got these animals just sitting like in the middle over here. And it's really neat. I love it.
Cool. So that was your number 3.
Yes.
My number 3 is also a farming game. It's Agricola.
Oh, yeah.
Published in 2007. It's a U. Rosenberg game, and it was published by Lookout Game. This one has a complexity of 3.64 out of 5. And it's funny, I bought Agricola very early on in my gaming life. I had heard of it. Like, it was, like, it's a game that's it's a classic, and it's been talked about a lot. And when I got into it, it's like, oh, this is a game I probably should have. I bought Agricola. And then me and my friend Aaliyah decided to play this, and neither one of us were very big gamers at the time. We're just starting, and we had never heard of this, and it was a beast.
Oh, yeah.
And we had the rule book open, and we're like, wow, what? Because there was so much going on for how green we were, right, in the gaming world. So this was a big jump from King of Tokyo to Agricola. So.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
But it was neat. Like, we could tell, okay, well, this is a neat game, but holy. And then I played it, and I didn't play it for a long time after that. And then we played it again. I played it with Lee. I played it with Jerome. And I tend to play it mostly 2 players. It just seems to be that the way it worked out.
Yeah, it can be very long at more.
Yeah, it could be longer. And then I think it's because the biggest complaint I hear about Agricola is the difficulty of getting your people fed.
Yeah.
Because you got to feed them at the end of each not each round, but at a certain time.
Harvest.
If you don't have the food required, then you take blame, or because you got to go beg for food, and then that kind of gives you some negative points at the end of the game, which kind of will really affect your score. But at 2 players, that's not that big of a concern. You can get to food.
Yeah.
Right? Can. So, and then that's never really seemed to be that big of an issue in my games, so I don't know. But it's really neat, as in each round, you'll have new action that comes up. And it's in worker placement.
Yep.
And then you'll be doing these things, and you're getting food, and you're building your farm, and then you have, like, your own board that where you build, and you can do, like, your fence, and you put in your fence out. And then it just is such a neat, satisfying game to play. And it's so cool. All the little meeples and all the little components that you have into it, and then all the building you do as you play, like, it's a very satisfying game. So that's why it's my number 3, Agricola.
Yeah, it's so good. And just the fact when you're, building your crops and you place a wheat or a pumpkin down, and then you get to add more so that they grow, and then when you harvest, you get to take them off. Oh, it's so satisfying. I just love the farming part of it. Yeah. Yeah, I love this game. I haven't played it enough. Like I said, I played it as a new gamer, and then I just acquired again, and I've only played a couple times. But this and Caverna, I just love them, and I don't even know where they would end up on this list. They'd be in this list for sure.
I've never played the Caverna version, so I can't see
that's
how that
a good
compares. I did get Agricola, all the creatures big and small.
It's really good too.
And it has the same feel, but it's like a quicker version of it.
It's quite a bit quicker.
So I enjoy both. I enjoy the full game of Agricola because you get a little bit more satisfaction with it. But it's like, okay, well, we don't have that much time. You know what? Let's do the all creatures big and small. And then you kind of get that satisfaction a little bit. It's a quicker, simpler version.
Yeah. He also has a simpler version of Caverna. It's called Cave versus Cave. And that one is really good too. Cherry has that one. We play that. It's just a nice little satisfying one too if you don't have the 3 hours to play the big game. Yeah. He does really well when he adds those 2-player games into his... I'm surprised he hasn't had a Feast for Odin 2-player game yet. I'm sure that's coming soon because he seems to have them for like all of his...
Most of them. Like, is La Havre from...
Well, he has, remember, Inland Port.
I know, and I've never played La Havre, but I've played Inland Port. I love it. Like, I love it. It's so good.
Le Havre is really good as well. And that's best played at 2, max 3 players. Because if you play with 4, there's only so many actions a turn. And I think with 4 or more players, you would only get 1 action. One person would. So that's
funny
not...
because, like, his big game version tends to feel like they're best at 2, and then he creates this 2-player version, which is equally good. And
I know. It's funny. I think because he's a German designer, I believe. I think they play over in Europe. Like gaming is a huge part of their life for a lot of people. Yeah. So families, they will play these games like starting at a young age. And some of them, like not this type of heavy game, but they will play games before school. Like they will get up and they play a game with breakfast. And I just want to be in that life.
Like, I was more like the Germans then.
Let's get up. It's game time. Come on. Everybody. Yeah, I need to be in that time.
Yeah, no kidding. It'd be interesting to see how like Alzheimer's compares to being an issue here compared to
I bet
your brain works so much.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yep. So that was your number 3?
That was my number 3.
My number 2 is Ark Nova. This is made by Matthias Wig and made in 2021. Now, I've only played it once, but even before I played it, just reading the rules, I knew I would absolutely love this game. There's so much hype from it, but that didn't, make my decision because I just, for one, I love animal games. Yep. So that right there had me. And the fact that you are building a zoo, I mean, I don't condone zoos, but in this one, there's so much conservation and you're partnering with universities that it's just so interesting. And each card, there's like a huge deck of cards in this game and they so intertwine with each other. It is compared to Terraforming Mars, the card play of it, which I can see because you have these little symbols on the cards that kind of trigger off other symbols. But
kind of has the engine building.
Yeah. It's so good. Ashley taught me last Sunday, and at first I was just overwhelmed with it, thinking, I just don't get it quite yet. And then, which usually happens to me with bigger games, I'm kind of a slow learner, but then mid-game, it all comes crystal clear, and then I can just figure everything out from there. So it's so neat, though. So what you do is you have an action selection board in front of you with 5 cards. It's kind of like Civilization, A New Dawn. They have the
Love
same.
That action selection.
It's so neat. So you have them lined up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the card that's in the 5th place is the most powerful. So you can use like a 5 action for that, depending on what you're going to do, whether you're going to take cards or you're going to partner with a university, or you might be sponsoring something, which is a card that will sponsor things. You might be what's the other one? Oh, building. You need to build habitats for or like enclosures for your animals in your little tableau. And it's not polyominoes, but it's like hexagon puzzle pieces that you need to fit around on this board. And they will also give you bonuses if you cover up certain things. Like, it's just so satisfying, that part as well. But just looking at the animals on the cards and just seeing how they will combo with each other and trying to complete some objectives. You have this board in front of you that is the scoring board, and you are trying to increase your appeal, which is on each card, there'll be a certain amount that you get from the card, but you also want to increase your, I'm going to say influence, but it's not. It's another name. And so this comes on the other side of the board. And once those two meet, just like in Rajas the Ganges, where fame and money meet, these two will meet, and that will trigger the end game. And then you do some end game scoring. And for however many points that you've crossed, like in between those two markers, that's what your score will be. So you could very well end up with a negative score. What's that?
That scoring concept is really interesting.
It is really neat. But there's also another track that will help you get better cards, give you bonuses along the way. And then you can take a break each time. Sometimes, like, no cards you might be able to play because you don't have money. So you can take a break and gain some money that way. It's just such a satisfying game. I will see myself playing this solo. I still have it on pre-order, so I don't have a physical copy yet, but I'm going to play it again very soon. I think we're going to play it Sunday. You have Lee's birthday, so you can't come. That's too bad.
No, I know. Yeah, Lee's is turning 42.
Oh, wow.
That'll be good.
Yeah, no,
Maybe
but
we'll be playing our own games anyway. So
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
but yeah,
no,
no, Ark Nova looked tutorial. But that video looked great.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
So that was your number.
That's my number 2. It might bump up higher as the more I play it, but right now it's number 2 with only one play.
Perfect. My number 2 is Ground Floor. It was published in 2012. It has a complexity level of 3.73 out of 5. And it was created by David Short, and it was published by Tastry Minstrel Games. And I think this one was a Kickstarter, possibly Kickstarter only. I bought it secondhand, not knowing a whole lot about it, but just the theme appealed to me. And it's so cool. It's a worker placement game, so you have all these different actions that you can do on the main board. And one of the actions you can do is hire staff. Now, if you hire staff, depending, like you flip a card, it's like, hey, there's this many staff available, but that's the wage that they'll require. So you'll need to be able to pay their wage as well. So we got to keep that in mind. And then it's like you're building this business. So there's advertisement that you can do where you advertise your business so that it improves some aspect of things. So there's where you do the production. There's where you can sell what you've produced. You can be upgrading your business, and then that's all on the main board. Then you also have your own personal board, and it starts off where you have this little building, and then on the side of the board there's the building at an angle, and then you have the roof that goes on top, and then that's different actions you can do if you put a worker there. And then as you play, you can also purchase new actions that you would get, and it would add tiers to your building. So now all of a sudden your building is a 3-story high building, and you have 3 different actions you can do. And then it just kind of adds these little level, and it looks so neat as you're building this building, and it's becoming like a skyscraper or whatever, and you have all these different actions you can activate. And it's I would say it's like a heavier economic game, but it's so neat. It is so satisfying. It looks amazing. And then, kind of acquiring the different workers, and you have your regular full-time workers, and then the seasonal one that you kind of hired on, and then having to pay them, and then assigning them to do these different things, and they're trying to get so that you have the highest money, I guess, at the end of the game, or highest profit. But it's such a cool game. I really like this one, and that's my number 2, Ground Floor.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, no, I haven't played this one. Is this one by Gil Hova? Did you say?
It's by David Short.
Oh, okay, I'm thinking of a different one. Okay. Yeah, neat.
This is one that I've heard very little about.
Yeah,
I think much. It was probably a Kickstarter and never really hit retail. So, because I don't see tons of copies of this or this being talked about very much, but it's a neat game. It's not that it's super complex, but there's a lot more going on, and it's definitely an economic game. So maybe doesn't appeal to everybody, but I love this one.
Neat. All right, we're on our number 1s. My number 1 is Clans of Caledonia, made in 2017 by Juma El Juju. Now this one is a bit of a cheat for what I had said around the 3.5 because it's 3.46. It does feel to me, though, it's definitely over 3.5. Now, this is another farming game, but there's a little bit more involved in this one, too. To me, this is in the same category as Terra Mystica and Gaia Project, because you are not just building up things, but you are also putting your factories and farms, I guess, on a board. And there's some area control there as well, because you're trying to connect settlements and have as many different settlements as you possibly can that are within shipping range. So you don't want to just have one big one. You want to split them up so that you have a whole bunch of different ones. And that's quite tricky to do, especially with more players. But what you're doing is you have this player board in front of you with all these different type of animals and crops and workers. You have forest workers and mountain workers, so miners and lumberjacks, I think they're called. And so you can place any of those out on the board, and there's costs on the board as well as costs for putting out these workers in factories. And when you put them out at the end of the round, they will produce, not the workers, but the factories and the farms will produce. You either get milk, wool, you'll get wheat, which you could turn into bread or whiskey. And what you're doing with these things is you're trying to complete contracts. And it's kind of neat because the first round, you get paid to take a contract. The second round, it's free. The third round, you pay $5. And the next round, you pay 10. And the last round, you pay 15. So they get more expensive. So if you can, you would try to fulfill as many as you can in the first couple of rounds. It's really tricky to fill one out in the first round because you don't have any. You have a few resources that you start with, but they most likely won't fulfill those contracts. So you may have to go to the market, which is also a really neat mechanic in this. It's a trade market that you might buy a resource, and then when you buy it, it will go up. And then when you when you buy it, it'll go down. Now I forget how it works, but it either goes up or down, and then when you sell, it goes up and down. It benefits, or it makes it harder to buy or sell. And you can't buy and sell in the same round, so you can't bump up the price and then sell a bunch of it. You can't do some inside trading that way. But the market is really neat. You want to also increase your shipping and add more market people so that you can do more at the market. There's so much thinkiness in this game because you also have a player power. And I didn't say this, but you're in Scotland, I believe, and you have these Scotland clans, and each player plays with one that has different abilities, and that's what you're growing. And it's such a neat theme because they all kind of have traditional themes and they all have their kilts that, you're like the MacDonald clan or the McPherson clan, and you're just trying to obviously get the most points, but there's also objectives at the end of the round that you want to try and fulfill. And then there's these little corners of the main board that you're trying to reach because they each have a really cool bonus on them. So if you could reach all 4 corners, you get a really cool bonus throughout the game that will help you fulfill contracts and give you bonuses with the contracts because they will give you points or different resources, or they will up your shipping and just give you all kinds of things. I am quite addicted to this game right now because you can also play this on Boardgame Arena, which I don't usually ever play big heavy games on there, but this one I will play. I just love it. I love playing it on the table as well. This is my favorite right now, Clans of Caledonia.
That sounds cool.
Yeah.
So my number 1 is by far the heaviest game in my whole list, and that's Kanban. And it was published in 2014. It has a complexity of 4.36 out of 5. It's a Vital Lacerda game, and it was published by Stronghold Games. And, I mean, Vital Lacerda is a big name in gaming, and then when I kind of was getting into starting to buy games, I was like, well, I should have a Vital Lacerda game. So I wanted to have a Vital Lacerda game, and I bought Kanban at the first fall con I attended. And they're like, oh, so what did you get? And I was showing it to people, and I was like, oh, I got Kanban. I was like, oh, wow, Kanban? Oh, wow, good luck. And I was like, oh, and I was so intimidating at the complexity of this game because everybody was like, oh, my God, I can't believe you got Kanban. I was like, okay, well, let me know how it goes. And I was like, oh, no. So, like, what did I do? So I owned it for years before I even tried to play it. And then we played it, I want to say it's just in this last year. So I bought it in 2018. I played in 2021. But I had watched a few tutorials on it, and I had read the book, and then I was like, I don't know, but everybody was saying just how complex of a game this was, and I was so intimidated. But in this one you are a worker in a automobile factory, and there's a few actions that it's Honestly, there's not that many actions to do. I think there's like 8 different actions that you can do. Each action has 2 spots, whether you're going to do a full shift there or a 3/4 shift. And if you do a 3/4 shift, you're not going to get to accomplish quite as much as if you can do a full shift. But if you go to do the full shift and it's already been taken, like, there's limitations of what, like, this game gets tight quick. But there's a spot where you can go and test the vehicles that you've done. There's a spot where you can go and acquire parts. There's a spot where you can go and get some designs that you can create, new vehicle designs. And then there's a spot where you actually assemble them. And then there's a spot where you do like the meetings. And then at the meetings, you kind of bring up stuff to try to score on different aspects of things. And depending on what you bring forward, if you have the most there, then you might be the one scoring it, but you might be the one not scoring it. And then you're getting these spots at the meeting table. So you put these little chairs at the meeting table so that there's more stuff that you can bring up. So more opportunities to score on different things. And you kind of know what you can bring up because you have these cards ahead of time, so you can kind of concentrate on getting those type of things done up. And then you also have the factory manager that goes around that you can play I think they called her Sandra.
Oh,
and
yeah.
you can play with a nice Sandra version where if you're ahead of different things, she gives you bonuses. Or you can play with the mean Sandra, and if you're behind in different aspects, she'll penalize you. But because each aspect, you can also go there and do the action, but you can also educate yourself under each aspect. So you're kind of taking training, I guess, as you go as well, and upgrading yourself in those different departments. And but so she'll go from like the open spot. So she starts in her own office, and then she'll go, and depending the first available spot is where she'll go, and then she'll score that one. So if you're the highest or lowest there, then you would get something that happens to you. And then, but you could be where it's blocked, and then it's also interesting because, like, if you're first player, well, where the people are, they're still not available until they move out of the way, and like, so it's a game that gets really tight. And I was freaking out over this game for nothing. It was not as difficult to learn and play as I was led on to believe. But it was a really neat game, and I had picked this one because of the automotive theme. I figured this would be one that would appeal to my kids. And It was me, Lee, and Nick that played it the first time. And it went over really well. It was a neat game. And then you kind of have your personal garage where you can kind of bring some of these design and perfect them yourselves. And you score for each vehicle that you created and all this. It's such a cool game. And that's why it's my number 1, Kanban.
Nice. I do love the Lacerda games as well. I haven't played Kanban, but they just missed my list only for the fact that I don't get them to the table as often because I do have to relearn them each time I play because they're so rule heavy. But I think my favorite of the Lacerdas is the Gallerist. I don't know if you've played that one.
No, this is the only
it's the only one. Yeah. That the one thing about his games is they're so heavy and complex, but they're so thematic as well that once you, like, as you're learning it while you're playing, it all kind of makes sense, and it just seems to flow so well because he puts a lot of thought into the flow of his games, I feel like.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I do have Weather Machine coming at the end of the year. I'm looking forward to of his. But
Very
yeah,
nice.
Good choice.
Thanks. So I guess that was it for our list. Now next week we're going to be doing our top 9 dice games.
Yes.
Now
So
we've done our top 9 small dice.
Yes.
So now we're kind of looking at more intricate games that utilizes dice in there. So we'll be doing that next week. Now before we kind of end everything, Carla, where can we find you?
I'm on Instagram at Boardgame Specialist, all one word. And I also have a Facebook page, Red Deer Board Game Fanatics. What about you?
So I'm also on Instagram as boardgame_mama. My YouTube channel is Boardgame Mama. And on Facebook, my Facebook page is Disbury and Area is playing all the games.
Nice.
Wonderful. So that's it for this week. Be sure to tune in next week to find out about our top 9 dice games. So bye, everybody.
Bye for now. Thanks for listening.